Gabriel to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0.
Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it. Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia. Who better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white.
Welcome to the Saints FC podcast, and yes, we've got another foray into the Ultimate 11 Saints FC podcast collaboration, which Ben set up for us. And as promised, Mick Channon Jr. has managed to speak to Mick Channon Sr. and get his Ultimate Saints 11. Huge thanks to Ben, Robbie for helping us set this up, and both the Mick Channons for being such good sports and doing this. This conversation between the two Mick Channons is absolutely lovely, and I can tell you what, there's no way you'd have guessed Mick Channon Senior's team. It's a really great one, and there's some lovely stories in here as well. Hope you all enjoy listening back to this, and of course do let us know what you think. Email us saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com or get in contact on Twitter @saintsfcpodcast. Anyway, over to the Mr. Channons.
Okay. Yeah. So you got your cup of tea. You got your tea.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't want to tread on anyone's toes, but we've managed to snaffle. I'm Mick Channon, by the way, and this week we've got another one called Mick Channon. One of us played 5 games very badly for the reserves in the mid-1990s. The other fella did slightly better. How are you, Michael?
Yeah, very well. Good to see you. Good to speak to you. Good to be alive and kicking.
Well, exactly. And I suppose I'll take this opportunity just because we've just finished the horses. We're at the stud and you're always so busy, but it'll be a nice opportunity, I think, to go through your Ultimate Saints 11. Where do you want to start, really? I mean, have you got a formation in mind? Let's go back. Because, I mean, you're not going to do it with players you played with necessarily. You're not going to do it with... Because you started as a supporter, didn't you? Let's go back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember sort of, when would it be now? Back in the early 60s, probably, probably the late 50s, which is even more frightening. I remember my dad lifting me over the stalls, over the turnstiles, to come in at the dell at the top end there, where you walk down where the entrance was, And I remember my first game against Swindon, with Southampton Swindon, you couldn't get in the place. And I got lifted over that day by Dad, and he got in, and I sat on I was on his shoulders for most of the game. And and it was a 1-1 draw, and John Page scored the equaliser, for Southampton. It was 1-1. So, but being a Wiltshire lad who in fact, I was born in between Swindon and Southampton, But my dad was always a Southampton supporter. Obviously, being a Hampshire man, he came from Lassam. He was born in Dummer, which is near Basingstoke, and so he was the Southampton man who basically channeled me that way. And same as I did with you and Jack and all the family. We're all Southampton supporters.
So it was a car full, was it, or just you and your dad come down?
Just me and my dad. Well, my mother used to go shopping. We used to go to football Saturday afternoon. That was the ritual, every other week. But and then we eventually stood just behind the box in the dell, just by the box, by the right hand side of the box. And on big days,
the manager's dugout.
Yeah, the dugout. Yeah. And on full days, I remember being lifted over the crowd to get up the front. The kids were always lifted over, And
who was manager then?
Ted Bates.
Yeah.
Ted Bates was the manager. He was the first manager I ever knew, but he was there longer than God almost, wasn't he? So
you started out as a supporter, then you become a player. What sort of transitions that from from watching your heroes and then what?
Well, that's right. I mean, I suppose, my heroes in them days were the likes of Terry Payne, John Sydenham, Derek Reeves. Derek Reeves was only a little fella centre forward, and
then the transition, you got signed, and then
exactly.
So you've seen everything because now you're a supporter again. That must be weird.
Well,
it's weird for people who.
I've gone full circle, but that's an age thing. But it was great. When I had the opportunity, I could have gone to Swindon to play. Bert Ed wanted to sign me, and Ted Bates and Tom Parker came and signed me on a Sunday night. And by all accounts, that used to be illegal. You couldn't, you had to sign on the Saturday or on the Monday. And I think they backdated it.
Is this when you embarrassed? Who was the Arsenal captain that came with his medals? Grandma was telling me about it.
That's Tom Parker. That was Tom Parker.
Right.
He was the head coach. Ted bought him. He was the head scout.
Right.
At Southampton. But he played for Arsenal. You're dead right. He was an Arsenal player. I think he played for Southampton, but he was Ted Bates' scout. That's what he was.
Is it true you embarrassed Grandma because you didn't really give a monkeys about the medals he was showing you?
Probably, yeah. Probably, But you listen, when you're a kid, all you wanted to do was play football. And, I'm sure things haven't changed much now, and kids are still the same. They still want to play football, and but. No, it was a little bit different in them days, I think, and it was a lot harder to get recognised and get picked up and get started. But I was fortunate enough, I played for Wiltshire Schoolboys against Hampshire, and they had some good players, your Mickey Judds and Bob McCarthy's and, Bill Errington was the other scout at Southampton. Mickey Ellard.
And you ended up playing well. You all ended up at the Dell.
We all ended up at the Dell as apprentices in the same, But I I played for Wiltshire. But we played at Andover, and I think they beat us. 5-4 or something. It was a cracking game, and it was under floodlights. And as a kid, you didn't get to play under floodlights. And I always remember that was probably the first game we played under floodlights. I ever played under floodlights. I think I scored 2 or 3, and I was tapped up by Bert Head. Bert Head was there. Yeah. Bert Head was there, and he came in the dressing room after and said, he'd come and see me on the following Monday, and that's why a fella called Snowy Day, who was a mad Southampton supporter in Shrewton, lived in Shrewton, used to go there. Dad used to know him, used to speak every week. Anyway, he got hold of the club and told him that I was going to go to Swindon. So that's when Bill Errington said, well, I was there and he was very good, and, all history then. And Tom Parker got hold of us, and they come up on the Sunday night and nicked me from under Bert Ed's nose. Bert Ed never forgive us, bless him, he's gone now, but he was a real Wiltshire lad, West Country lad.
I suppose it was a fortuitous thing, because Southampton were very much on the up, and only 3 or 4 years after you signed, they went up. So
but you say that Swindon were a very good team. They had a great youth policy, which Bert Ed was behind. Your Summersby, your Don Rogerses, your Woodruffs. They had some great players in them. So Southampton and Swindon were both attractive clubs to go to. You could have gone to either of them, really.
Right. We've got plenty of history. So let's go through your team. Should we start at the very beginning with the goalkeepers?
Start with the goalkeepers, you've got to. And
who springs to mind from, who were the first Southampton goalies that just pop in your head?
Well, probably ended up being my best mate ever. Big, honest Bob Charles.
Bob Charles. Tell us about Bob Charles.
Bob Charles played for England youth. He was like a childhood wonder, He was a big lad. Bit overweight, in this day, but very, very good goalkeeper. Very agile when he was 16, he was very agile. By the time he was 18, he was finished, But a great goalkeeper, and what finished him was he broke his elbow and he could never straighten his arm was always bent, So he was forced to and he was a big friend. His biggest mate was Nobby Stiles, because they played for England youth together. And he ended up being my landlord, but we had some time, some laughs. Great lad, great character. Honest Bob, we called him.
Why is that?
I really ought to hand it over to you because you used to buy your car. I said,
Yeah.
buy Michael a car, will you?
If you ever got done in terms of buying a car, Bob Charles of Sandhurst will ring truly in your desire. But wasn't Bob? He always had his most proudest moment was at Bert Troutman, wasn't it? When they went to City, and Bert Troutman they beat him 5-2 or something in the cup.
Yeah.
And Bert Troutman came up to him and said, "Well played, young man. You'll go far." He wasn't right, though, was he?
No, and fortunately, Bob's career was cut short. But what a character! He ended up being, like you say, a car dealer, a docky. I could tell you stories about him. Coming off the liners with contraband, and they'd all stop and they'd bump into each other, and the bottles would clink and what have you. And they'd notice that Reggie was at the bottom of the gangplank. Bob said, "That's all right. We were all right, boys. Walk on." So they'd all
Reg, my granddad.
Yeah, your granddad. So he'd
Customs
get down,
officer.
Customs officer. So he'd walk down and they'd all walk off, and all the customs officers were stood there, and he used to let them get about 200 yards across the tarmac, and they go, "Bob, just come back here, please." And then he'd come back there, and they say, and Bob would say, "Yeah, what is it, Reggie?" He said, "Don't forget the boys."
They were great customs officers.
They were They were proper customs officers.
So he's the one that makes you smile the most. But other keepers you were involved with,
Yeah.
or you remember playing the Saints?
Well, I mean, probably Shilton was probably the best. The most dedicated, the most, anorak. I'd say he'd drive you mad, but a great keeper, and he's a good lad as well. But I was lucky enough. We played. We had Eric Martin, chocolate wrists, we used to call him. Seemed to get his hand to everything, but everything used to go in the goal. But he was a great lad, Eric Martin.
He used to have some tough days on his hands, though. The Leeds and the Everton matches spring to mind.
Well, absolutely. At Southampton where we were an alehouse team, and what I'm trying to say is the first game at the Dell of the season used to be called a relegation battle. So that'll put you. It was tough to survive, and so the goalkeeper was always, the first one in line. Who was going to get the stick, but. But going on from then, I go back as far as Campbell Forsyth.
Yeah.
The Scots lad, big lad, I believe he died just recently, just the last few days. And, but he was, I'll always remember I was only 16, I was in the trenches, there were the
front of the,
yeah.
Oh, in the dugout.
In the dugout, and Shilton, I think, was it Shilton or it was Shilton, edge of the box, kicked the ball out, and you could see him. He was stood on the penalty spot, and I thought, this is going to go over his head, and it bounced on the edge of the penalty box and went over his head and in, and that was the only goal I've ever seen a goalkeeper score, from a direct kick out, But he springs to mind. Then we had Ivan Katalenic. Remember Ivan Katalenic?
My granddad, catastrophic.
Yeah, that's right.
And Ian Turner, obviously.
You can't forget Ian Turner, who basically won the FA Cup for us. Really, he was in the first 20 minutes. He was the top dog, and great lad, hard working, so all the lads had a lot of talents. Obviously, Schultz, without saying, is the class one who's.
Which means I've got to pin you down here. What is the Mick Channon team? What is this team supposed to be winning the league, or are you doing it because they make you smile? Are you doing it? Because...
No, I'm doing it because they make me smile. They're me mates. They're all me mates anyway. I can consider them all. Whoever I talk about there, I would love them to be in. But you say I can only have one.
You can only have one goal.
Bob Charles, no question.
Bob Charles, okay. That's fine. Charles.
That's upset a lot of people straight away.
No, it's your team. It doesn't matter. So Bob Charles is Mick Channon's goalkeeper, and we'll go on to right back. I mean, have you got a big choice of right backs?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think there's an awful lot. You got Peter Rodrigues, obviously, who was our captain in the cup final. And you got Ivan Golak, who I had some of the, later on in my life, I had some great days with Ivan Gold. Bloody bastard little, he used to say to me, you know, because I say, come on, Ivan, keep up and that, you know what I'm trying to do. But he loved his football. He was a great right back, but he was more of a right winger than a right back.
Yeah,
you know,
I've said this already. Yeah,
you know, he was the best. You know, he was the best right winger I think I've played with. You know, probably.
So is he getting your right back spot or Pedro?
I'm Ivan, because I'm everything about me is winning.
Right. Okay.
So I'm going for Ivan.
And I suppose when Peter Reeves was there, he was 36, getting on a bit, whereas Ivan was in his pomp, really.
That's right. So I'd go for Ivan at right back.
Right. Centre halves. Now, are you playing 3 at the back? Are you playing 4 at the back?
Well, there's so many good ones to play at the back, but I'll probably just go with one. But I don't know whether I could trust him. You know.
Well, I've gone with one at the back with one centre half. So
but, you know, I mean, when you go through them, you know, you got John McGrath. You know, he's big as a block of flats and just about as manoeuvrable. That was the quote that Peter Back come up with. You know, I mean, some of the sayings they did, but. He was a great character, John McGrath, but you know, and I think that's where we got the alehouse name from. That's when Shankly called. He got out of Alan Evans one day and lifted him up, like, you know, and I think he was going to eat him, you know. And after that, Shankly called us the alehouse team. So, but and then you got him. You got Dave Watson, bless him, who's got dementia now. They tell me. I saw in the paper today that. I didn't know he was ill, but he was a very solid player. But Jimmy Gabriel, what a character! Jimmy Gabriel. I want to go with Jimmy, really.
You want to go with Jimmy Gabriel?
I want to, but it's a toss up between him and Jim Steele. But Jimmy Gabriel was a great character. He was older when he arrived at Southampton. He'd been around a bit, and he'd been at Everton when they won all the big ones. But a great competitor. You know, he very dedicated. He used to get quite heavy and put on a bit of weight, and then he'd go on a diet. And he'd go on a diet all week until Friday night. And then he'd get absolutely pissed, you know, because he'd watched High Chaparral, and they slid a bottle of scotch down the bar, and a fella drunk it all. And he says, that's impossible. So he tried it himself. He couldn't get up to bed that night, you know. He turned up next day for the game stinking of scotch. So. I mean, it sounds very unprofessional, but he was a great competitor, and as I said, some of these lads, you just had to believe where they came from and the tough upbringing they had, and you know. So I would go for Jimmy Gabriel or Jim Steele. It's a toss up between the two. I could play the two of them at the back, you know, but I got to mention sort of Mel Bly.
You got to mention Mel,
yeah, who was in our cup final team.
Yes.
Moaning Mel, we used to call him. You know, he used to love a whinge, but a good lad. And another one I got to mention, Cliff Oxford, because Cliff Oxford used to kick lumps when I was an apprentice. Oh, he's the only man that really frightened the shit out of me. You know, if you could live with Cliff Oxford, you could survive. But between him and Dennis Hollywood, who played at left back, that was a tough life. You didn't want to, you know.
So you were 16, 17?
16 when I first come in, but that didn't matter. You got hoisted, you know. If you played in the reserves against the first team and you went by them, fucking hell, that was the end of the world, you know. You know.
So are you having 2 or 1 at the centre half? I went with 1 simply because I want to see more lads going forward. But
well, Steely was the most talented without any question. He's a headbanger, nutcase.
He's changed a lot though.
But I loved him, and you know, I think everyone did, you know. So I would. Jimmy Gabriel won't be happy with me, but I'll just go for Steely. I'll just play the one at the back because I'm only going to play one left back as well, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very torn here.
So Jim Steele's your centre half.
So Jim Steele will be the centre half. Ivan Golek, Jim
right back.
Yeah, will be right back.
Okay, and your left back.
Steele, my left back. Well, there's only 3 that would come close to it, you know.
Yeah.
Which would be David Peach.
Yeah.
Who was in the cup final team and got a brilliant left foot, and he's still around. He still reminds me that he used to fucking lay out, make a few goals for me. But I said, but I had to be quick enough to get on the end of them. Fucking, he thought I was fucking, Concord, I think. And then there was Tommy Traynor.
And that is going back.
He's going back a little bit. He was the first fella to really take me under his wing and look after me as a young lad. And he was renowned for his slide tackles. He used to. Anyone who remembers the old Dell, he would start off sort of sliding about 20 yards before he took the ball on the player. Especially on wet ground. He used to have a yard of skin off his backside every day.
And he was your landlord, wasn't he?
He was my landlord, yeah. Great family, the Traynors. And I think I named a horse after him once, called Tommy Traynor. But a great man.
Set up the Tyro League, didn't he?
He started the Tyro League. Tommy Traynor, 33 and a third, he always used to say. And he lived at 33 Treeside Road.
In Shirley.
In Shirley. And that was me dig. So, he just
again, he probably wouldn't be in the World 11, but in your he's got a chance along with.
He's got a chance of fucking nicking the hardest man, I think, and the toughest left back I've ever seen, Dennis Hollywood, who, when we played Man City, him and Summerby used to spend the first 20 minutes passing it to each other so they could tackle each other.
They didn't get on Mike Summerby and Dennis Hollywood.
They didn't get on, but they always respected each other. Even to this day, you bump into Mike Summerby. You ever bump into him?
That's the first thing he said. We saw him
just
at York.
ask him about Dennis Hollywood.
Yeah. He always goes, "Give Dennis my best," and that's a true story. We saw him at York a few years ago, and he went, "All right, Mick, how's Dennis Hollywood? Give Dennis my best." And I mentioned him to Dennis last time I see him. He went, "Don't talk to me about that."
But God, I remember Franny Lee saying they came down and they were going to be champion. They were champions elect almost. And he said, "Fucking look at that Summerby." And he said, "We've come down here wanting to survive, and towards the end of the season, we want a nice run in, and they're kicking lumps out of each other." He said, "It's stupid." He said, "This is mental." He said, "There's no winners." But no.
So you've got the choice: Peach, Traynor, or Hollywood.
Yeah. I'm going for Tommy Traynor.
Tommy Traynor, there you go.
There you go.
Left back for Mick Channon is Tommy Traynor, which moves us. We'll go right side, will we? Is this going to take long?
No, this won't take long.
Right side of midfield.
We go right side. I remember some real good players. I remember Ken Wimsdorf. He was a good midfield player in the cup run that they had when they beat Nottingham Forest.
63, yeah.
5-0 and went to Tottenham and beat them in the replay. But there's only one really, and that's Terry Payne. Terry Payne was in a class of his own. As I said, don't get me wrong, there's been some other good players, Danny Wallace, and there's been some other real good players that fit in that, but Payne is the outstanding one.
I mean, the stats back up. I don't think we need to go on about it, apart from saying, from a personal point of view, you were a fan of his, and then you were a teammate.
Exactly. But then you come to the midfield, and that it does get a bit difficult,
You're playing 4 across the middle?
I think I will.
So you've got 2 centre mids here coming in.
Yeah. Also got 2 centres. So you've got to mention Brian O'Neill, who's one of my best mates. But again, headbanger. Bowley, another mate. Hughie Fisher, Steve Williams, another headbanger. Jesus Christ. And the best player Southampton have had ever, I think, Le God. And then you've got Jimmy McCalliog, who was a very, very talented player. Great football brain, and played in the cup final. And Paul Gilchrist, who played alongside him. Paul was the hod carrier, the one who did all the work. A bit like Hughie, to be fair. So, it's really a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. As much as I love Brian O'Neill and I want him in, I would go for Bowley and God.
So Bowley's going to have to do. So this is probably the elderly Bowley who we saw at Saints probably in the early 80s. He's holding definitely, is he?
Yeah. And well, that's right. He let the Tiz do what he fucking wants. Well, he will anyway. So,
2 special players really.
Two of the best players that I was privileged. I didn't have the privilege of playing with the Tiz, but he was just after me. I was a supporter then, and he's the best I've ever seen.
Okay, so far the 3 in midfield: Terry Payne on the right, in the middle is Alan Ball and Matt Letiz. on the left? I mean, I suppose.
Now then, this is up for grabs. You got Nicky Holmes, who was the stalwart, solid as a rock. You couldn't fault him, couldn't fault his attitude, his professionalism. Great player.
Quite annoying though, isn't he? Because he played all them years for his hometown club, and he's an incredibly nice person as well. Is there anything wrong with Nick Holmes?
No, well, I say, is there anything wrong with sport today? Everybody's nice now. It worries me.
Well, they're all following Nick. I suppose
in our day, we used to have rows and fights in the dressing room.
Didn't Nick ever?
No.
That sums it up, doesn't it? I love Nick.
But he was one of the fittest men I ever knew, and he was a great character. Then David Armstrong, he was a very good, solid player, great left foot. He played there for several years. But I got to go back to probably one of the best, the quickest. I've seen him run off the pitch onto the track to get round the player and still get to the ball and cross it. And he was lightning, a fellow called John Sydenham.
John Sydenham, and he was same era as Terry Payne.
Same as Terry Payne, and the same as a very good centre forward I know called Derek Reeves, and we'll come to a bit later on. But he was lightning. He was the quickest thing that I think I've ever seen.
And you ended up playing with him as well?
Yeah, I played with him. Yeah, I mean, it was towards the end of his career, but and they dropped him a couple of times to play me because Martin Chivers was still there, but it wasn't fair on him because I wasn't a left winger or anything like that. But when I first got into the side, but Sydney, he was when I was a kid, him and Payne and Derek Reeves were awesome, I mean, the goals they scored, he used to fly down the left wing and whack it across, and Reeves, he'd throw himself at it and they'd carry him back to the halfway line unconscious, Well,
let's come over to that then. So you're playing 3 up front, because you played 3 at the back, 4 through the middle, and then you got 3 up front. And you've mentioned Derek Reeves.
Yeah, I mentioned. Well,
I mean, he was. You never. Did you? You obviously.
No, I never played with him. I knew him, but I didn't know him. I knew Derek because he had finished when I got there. But he was only a small fella. He wasn't very big, but he was a very good, very quick in the box, and just get a half a yard on you. Like when he says you only need an inch. If you get the first touch of the ball, there's a chance of it going in the net. But they used to whiz down the wing. Payne, he was the jinker and go by people, get the thing, But Sydenham flew down, whacked it across, and he used to throw his head at it and throw any part of his body at it. And then he used to cart him back to the... He used to get 3 or 4 goals a game. He was brilliant.
Well, I think when they came up from Division 3, he scored... I think he still holds the record for the most goals in the season.
Yeah,
I think nearly 39 goals, something like that.
Yeah, he was... but you had to know him, so people wouldn't... So he's going to be one of me.
He's definitely in.
He's definitely in.
Was he your hero? So this is you as a kid, I take it, watching Derek Reeves.
Absolutely.
So he was a real one of your first heroes?
He was, yeah. As I say, when I started, he basically had just finished.
Yeah.
So that's how, and I mean, I can go back to Charlie Livesey, Charlie Wayman,
You can't go that far back.
Up the middle for Charlie,
You can't go... You're not that old, are you?
No, but I remember them, because I like the history of it, But going back to it, I mean, I think that probably the one you would have to stick with would be, Ozzy was such a talented player, and probably the great thing with Ozzy was one of them players who was a brilliant player at 16 till he was sort of 20. Yeah. He had 4 years. And then his size and everything else. I mean...
Is this a choice or is this a discussion?
No, this is a discussion about
right.
Ozzy,
yeah,
So but I think, Ozzy's going to be in my team.
He's in. He's definitely in.
Ozzy's going to be in, as a front player.
Yeah.
And, but, I remember Ozzy, when he was at his best.
Yeah.
I never felt he was at his best at Southampton.
Yeah.
But at his best, he was he was as good as Bestie.
Yeah. Was he really?
Yeah. He was as good as Bestie. From 16 to 18, 20.
Yeah.
He was brilliant. For a big man, and he was a big man.
Hmm.
So...
how did he, could you see was he so much worse, or was he just that good when he came to Saints? So,
Well, you could still see the ability was there, but he just didn't have that half a yard. He just lost that... his torso was that much heavier, that much bigger. When he was a young man, he had that little bit of agility, that little bit quicker, you know, he was that sharper.
But he obviously brought plenty to the party on sheer ability alone. I mean, what role did he play in the cup final?
Well, absolutely. Well, I mean, we wouldn't have got there at Bradford that day if he hadn't fucking flicked it up and volleyed it. And you know what I'm saying is, and
Jimmy Mack
volleyed it over the wall. Great goal. You know, Ozzy saw that. I mean, that's the type of thing he does. He was a match winner.
So you've got Derek Reeves and Ozzy. You've gone early on your choices because you've scribbled down $1 million here.
Yeah, no.
This is going to be a tough one.
You know, I got to come to Phil Boyer, Bobby Stokes, who played in the cup final. Stokes, he was just a great lad, you know. George O'Brien, I remember him in the Reeves era. That's when he was, and he could score goals. He was very good, very tricky, good player. Ron Davis, fucking great. I mean, one of the best. Ted McDougall, fucking hell, he was a character. Phil Boyer and Steve Moran. I mean, we've had plenty of top class.
And Ron Davis, obviously, he was probably your first partner as such, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, what's the name? But he was a brute of a man. You know, strong, all muscle, fucking great header, could jump higher than I don't know. He's just such an athlete. You know.
I mean, this team's full of people who you looked up to, and then you've got little like Steve Moran. I mean, he was like the youngest player I remember in the whole side. When that was my first team,
he was just a great goal scorer.
Yeah,
you know, he was brilliant in the box, quick, sharp. You know,
was he the same as McDougall and Boyer?
Absolutely, yeah, more or less the same sort of goals. They were, you know, Ted was a poacher, goal scorer, toe poked, did anything, just get it in the net. Yeah. You know, Phil Boyer, yeah, he taught himself to be a good goal scorer.
I remember as a kid because I remember Boyer, he just scored every week, and then when he left, it seemed to be Moran scored every week.
Exactly.
It was, as a kid growing up, it was like
they were both top class, you know, goal scorers, you know. Yeah.
So you got to nail down your final striker. You got Derek Reeves, Peter Osgood, and
there's only one other you could, and that would be Keegan, because Keegan could play either way. You could have Ozzy up front with Derek Reeves, and Keegan could fill in just behind him.
I thought you were going with Ron Davis. I really did. You're going with Kit. So you got Derek Reeves, Peter Osgood, and so where does Derek Reeves slot in? Because I never saw him.
Who?
Derek Reeves, where does he slot? Who plays where in this front three?
Well, I play Ozzy and Reeves up and Keegan just behind him.
Yeah, got you. Yeah.
All right.
I like the way that you've really taken this seriously. You're proper.
Well, I think they're great players.
Yeah.
And they're all match winners. They all wanted to win. They all had a great character. They all had something about them.
Where are this lot going to finish in? So give us your perfect time when these lads are playing. First of all, what Southampton kit are these? Is your team?
Red and white stripes all the way through, just the plain one.
Just with the old ring neck.
Ring neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got the classic. Yeah, all right.
Huh?
Your classic, and your assistant manager.
Assistant manager, bloody hell.
I mean, but first of all, what sort of manager do you think you'd be? Were you the track-suited man? Throwing bottles.
I'm the manager as well, have I? I've got to be a manager.
Yeah, you're the manager of this team. You can pick an assistant. So,
right.
This is a question. I'm interested in this.
Yeah, I'd probably go for Hughie Fisher.
Oh, you're not going to have Ted or Laurie. You've brought Hughie in. I'm loving that. I'm loving that.
I've got to have someone who can be real close to the players.
Yeah, and that's Hughie, is it?
Yeah.
That I never in a million years thought you were going. Okay, so your favourite kit's the classic. Assistant manager Hughie Fisher.
I thought Laurie was going to be the manager, see?
No, it's yours.
But I'm the manager,
You're the manager. Well, you're not going to tell Laurie what to pick, are you? Let's face it, that could never happen. And a few other things, really, I want to ask. While I've got you focused on football, because I don't think we've ever had these conversations. Obviously, your era that these teams playing in, I take it they're at the Dell.
Oh yeah, this is a team for the Dell.
This is the team, and in what age group? You know, in the early 70s, early 80s. You know,
it'll be when they could still rattle the stand, and you could hear the rumble before you could.
Yeah. And what we were talking about it earlier? What stage of the season has Les put the sand all over it? Is it the beach?
And that bog has got to be on the right hand side, just where you come out down the hip.
It's got to be 3 foot deep.
Yeah, it's got to be. You've got to be able to go in at least 3 foot.
Yeah, I suppose you have got the players who could do a bit of clogging in the mud as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Tommy Trainer, he'd love it.
Well, thank you very much, Dad. There's a few surprises in there, and I'm sure there's a few names that some of us will have to go away and look up. Anything to add? You're looking forward to this season with this team going? I mean, it's going to be a hell of a ride on the team coach home. It's going to be.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, it's the biggest bunch of characters you ever come across in your life. Whether you would have a great time with them anyway, and that's what I did. I played with most of them, or knew them, or watched them as a kid, and they made football fun, and that's why I wanted to play football, because of the people that I've just talked about.
Okay, we'll go through the team one last time. The goalkeeper is Bob Charles. The right back, Ivan Golak. Shoring up the defence on his own is Jim Steele in the centre with, was it Tommy Trainer?
Tommy Trainer.
Tommy
yeah.
Trainer on the left.
Discipline with Steely, see, on his own.
On his own, yeah. Terry Payne on the right with Ball and Letizier in the middle. And have you gone for John Sidnall?
John Sidnall, the flying machine.
And up front?
Yeah, up front you've got Keegan just behind Osgood and Reeves, Derek Reeves.
There's a few goals in that.
Yeah. If there's not goals in that, there's goals in nothing.
Mick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daddy.
I'd like to see someone come up with a better team than that. They are.
Well, I already have. Well, we're different eras.
Yeah, well, but I think that is right across the board. That will take you across from the 50s right the way up to the modern day, more or less.
Oh, not Ricky Lambert never even got mentioned.
No, he didn't. No.
Thanks, Dad.
All right, not a problem. How long was that?
Plenty of time, 35 minutes.
Was it really?